Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Ben Stef, and I'm super excited. Today I have an excellent guest named Sean, who is a house hacker. And what I wanted to do on this episode is dive in deep and get tactical with basically like what he did to house hack, a lot of the problems that he had along the way, and then like what he did to solve it. And Sean, I know you and I were talking, you still have issues going on right now. And so kind of like what you're, how like what process you're going through to be able to solve all the issues and like what you did to manage that. So I'm excited to get into it and to do that. So Sean, thank you for being here.
Thanks for the invite, Ben. I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. So first things first, like obviously it's easier to just buy a condo or a single family home and like call it a day. Like that's most people, that's what they do. But like why did you want to buy a multifamily property where you live in one unit and like rent out the rest? Like why not just buy a single family home?
So I would say the simple response to that answer, right, is like I don't want to pay my mortgage. But the actual response is I I kind of had a weird transgression with real estate where like how I got into real estate was kind of a unique situation. And I really wanted to explore the passion in real estate. And the idea of house hacking really appealed to me for two ways. Like, obviously, yes, like the mortgage pay down, right? And like, you live rent free or close to it. But also for me, and like the more important thing was the knowledge that you gain from actually doing this is real world knowledge, right? Like a lot of people who become agents or who want to get into real estate specifically, they're scared of what can happen. And for me, it was let it happen. I want to learn. I want to figure it out. Like, I want the
Mm,
hard problems so that when somebody comes to me for advice, I can say, I did this personally. Here's what I would redo if I had another chance with the knowledge I learned.
dude, nobody has that mindset. Like that's so good. People are afraid, like we're afraid of the obstacles and like the issues. So we'll like choose the easy route because we're scared of the problems that can come. But like you said, you want those because you're turning it into an opportunity to learn and to eventually be able to like teach others, right? And so for those
Exactly.
listening, like Sean's a real estate agent, and so this applies to his business, but like there's so many other people that do this that aren't in real estate or they know nothing about real estate, from medical professionals to engineers, like you name it. And so like for you specifically, you knew that, okay, like I don't want to pay for my mortgage, I'm ready for like some of the trials, but like when you were getting ready to, like, did you just save money to buy the your first building, or what did you do to get ready for that
So
process?
I inherited a property from my grandparents, and basically it was a trial by fire. So no one in the family expected me to get it. And then so shortly after that, family members, broke into the house, stole like ten grand plus worth of stuff out of the house. And so that was
Family
like the
members?
yes, and yeah, like I won't go into details, right? But like
Yeah.
that was exactly what happened. And
Yeah.
so shortly after that, I really just tried to figure out like, hey, what am I going to do with this? And long story short, with that, summarizing it, I made the decision to flip it, and I flipped it. So I had capital from that, and I used the capital from that to house hack. But I had some pretty low upfront costs. I went FHA 3.5% down with the house hack. It just for
Mm.
me, it was like I wanted to preserve as much capital as possible because I didn't know what I didn't know, and I had the foresight to say, if you run into some major problems, you need to have enough capital to eat it all.
Mm. Right. So you didn't like spend all your money on the down payment. You had like obviously funds left over, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. What were, when you were looking for your property or your building, what were some like key things that you were really looking for to know? And obviously, I think this changed. Like you said, like you were, when you started talking, like knowing what you know now, you would have approached what you bought way differently.
Yeah.
But like, I guess walk me through in the beginning what you were looking for, and then now,
Mhm.
like what you would look for in a building.
So in the beginning, I was really focused on Like, what is the highest cash on cash return I can get? Another one that I really focused on is like I wanted specifically 4 units. In my head, it was like more
Why?
units, more better. like,
Mm,
like like there was not a deep understanding there. It was just like, yes, I want four. Why? Because more units is better.
more is
Like,
better.
it's like so. There was a real lack of like deep knowledge and like forethought, but I had enough gumption to know like I was willing to solve the problems, but I also coming to like the point that I'm at now, like I made some just glaring mistakes, right? And one of the bigger ones was not understanding all the different numbers and not understanding like if you make one or two mistakes regarding like villages, permitting issues, or like things
Mm,
that could potentially fail, your cash on cash looks really good, and then 20 to 40K later, it doesn't look really good because you made
mm,
some mistakes in not knowing what to look for. So like knowing what I would know now, I would
yeah.
say like I still wouldn't do really a duplex. I would do a triplex or a four. I would go away from frame and I would go brick. That's one thing personally
How
that I
come?
would. So like brick just tends to hold their value, and I found also over time it's easier for me to discern issues on the exterior with brick than it is for siding. Siding can mask problems, whereas
Mm,
brick shows most of the story, right? You can see the cracking and like all other issues with like the mortar and the brick itself. I just
yeah.
prefer to be able to have like a more complete picture. And you never know what's behind walls. Obviously, being an inspector, that's something that I think about now. And then also, I would be more conscious of the village that the building is in, and if it's not in the village, like if it's in the city, like what the city's going to require. I would really get into the details of if I run into major problems, is the village or the city going to be a larger problem also? And that's something
Mm.
that I never thought of, and then I learned it, and it was a hard lesson.
What do you mean by like if the village or the city would be a harder problem to deal with? Can you
So
elaborate?
I live in Blue Island, and the building department here is fairly notorious for being problematic for like flippers, investors, like people who want to do it right. They still create problems for you. Um, and I'm not going to sit here and say
Imagine
like
that.
yeah, I know, shocking. I'm not going to sit here and say like I didn't make mistakes on my end too. Sure, there's mistakes on both ends, but
Yeah.
just simple things like use this person to do this task, or if you don't, I'm going to find additional things wrong. That's the kind of stuff that has come up, and that's the kind of stuff that I've seen. And so if you talk to somebody who's a real estate investor who's done a larger amount of deals, they'll tell you like certain areas are just like this. And if you're not
Mm.
plugged in with the people who have those contacts that can make those problems go away, you're going to have to understand that you're going to be in the deeper end of the pool, and you need to learn how to play ball before you take the ball. Because once you take it, there's no going back.
Sean, that's excellent. I think for anyone listening, for if you want to buy a 3 to 4 unit property, like check out the area. Not well, when I say area, I don't mean like all the basics, common sense. I mean like the village, the city. Like, is it going to be an issue dealing with the local government when things go wrong, right? And a lot of people don't talk to the locals or like talk to experienced investors, like you said. And so they'll buy a 4 unit building and their cash on cash return looks a lot worse because now they're shelling out all this money that they like just weren't expecting. And so I think that's a really good point. Like talking to people that like are local that have invested. So like sometimes like realtors can be a good source. I feel like that's hit or miss, but like especially investors, like people that need to pull permits, people that need to like get things done that involve the local government, like those people are who you want to talk to. Would you say like that's sums it up basically?
Yeah, I would say like you really want to talk to number one, like your agent. Like if you're a first time investor, and like I'll speak directly to the audience on this. If you are a first time investor and your agent has never invested before themselves or have never been through this process, I'm not saying they can't do it, but they're going to have blindsides that they just don't know because they've never done it. And so you
Yeah.
need to be very educated and calculated on your first deal. If you're 10 deals in and you have cash flow to survive, it's less important and it's less impactful. But on your first
Mm,
or your second deal, those numbers really start to add up unless you're like well capitalized, and in which case, like good for you. I was not. Um,
yeah.
but like really what it boils down to, right, is like you have to talk to people who have done the thing that you want to do, and you have to speak to people who have physically done it in that area so that they can educate you on, like, hey, I owned it for a year and this is what I learned. Those are the things that you need. Same thing with like if you talk to a GC. If a GC says, yeah, I can pull permits, like that's great, but you need to be confident that that GC can pull permits and execute what needs to be executed at the level that it needs to be executed in specific areas, because
Mm,
certain inspectors are going to hold them to higher standards and be more problematic in certain areas. Like if you
mm,
talk to an investor who's done like deals in, like, let's say Alsip or Crestwood, for example, very simple, pretty straightforward process. I've had no issues with them, when I've worked there. You flip that and you say, okay, like maybe Bellwood or like maybe Blue Island or potentially Berwyn. And it's like you
totally
talk to
different.
people, totally different. Like
Yeah.
to the uneducated investor, they're going to look at like the numbers look good, this looks good, that looks good. Okay, I'm just going to pull permits and start. And then 9 months later, you're like, this was a mistake. I've burned so much capital. Like, especially if they do hard money on a flip or something like that, you can really inadvertently shoot yourself in the foot by not doing your due diligence.
Hey, quick question for you. How much have you been loving these podcast episodes? I've been getting a lot of great feedback from you guys, and right here is where I typically put in an ad or something for these episodes. But you know what? I was thinking about it, and the only thing I really want to promote right now is for you to just hit that subscribe button. I'm trying to grow this thing out, and so many of you are watching, listening, and sharing, but you're not subscribed to the channel, so please hit the subscribe button, and that's really going to allow me to grow this thing and continue to provide value for you guys. Let's get back to the episode. You hit on a lot of great things there. Like for anyone that like hasn't bought before, you're looking to buy your first building. This is what I tell people. Aside from a good, like you need to have a good like you have the realtor, you have the lender, and then in some states you have the attorney. And like having all three of those people that are familiar with like the investor side of things really matters. Like all realtors and all mortgage lenders can help you buy a 3 to 4 unit property, right, Sean? Like
100%.
sure, they could. They all could. But a majority of them or a good amount might be blindsided because there's going to be mistakes and things that they maybe could have caught ahead of time that they would have just known had they gone through the process before or had they helped other people before, right? And so if you're like, I would say for real estate, like really important. And then for me, because I do mortgage lending, like for anyone's listening, like I do a lot of loan programs for multi-unit buildings for multifamily properties. So knowing like the guidelines and knowing the like little things that terminate or kill these deals in underwriting also helps too. I cannot tell you how many times people like get into a transaction or they were pre-approved with someone else and then they find out, oh, I can't buy this 4 unit building because FHA has this self-sufficiency rule. Like nobody I didn't know that. And the lender didn't even know it either. The lender didn't know until they got under contract. So knowing things like that really helps you prep ahead of time. So I think Sean, like that's an excellent point. What specifically, so you bought a 4 unit, right? That was what you
Hmm.
said you bought?
Yeah, I bought a
Okay.
4 unit.
And how do you have it? Do you have it set up where you're living in like the smallest unit or like how did you pick which one you're living in?
Second, so I just took whichever one was vacant. This one I think is the
Okay.
second smallest unit.
Okay. And did you have to terminate any lease agreements or did you keep all the tenants when you bought
I
it?
kept all three.
Wow. Okay. Kept all three. Are they happy with you or no?
So one of them left actually a couple months ago. He was an excellent tenant, and the other two are happy. It was an out-of-state landlord who
Mm,
just band-aided like whatever was the cheapest possible
uh,
cost to like functionally fix things. And like I came in and like I had no genuine idea of like all the things that were broken, needed to be fixed, all the stuff that wasn't up to code. Like there was a lot of things that got signed off of that just
To
We're
not
just
have
blatant,
been.
yeah, just blatant
Yeah.
mistakes, like stuff that's like plumbing 101, electrical 101. Like this shouldn't
Dude.
have been signed off on. Like nobody should have said okay to this. And you know that again comes into like I didn't know what to look for. Like for those who are listening, I'm a licensed home inspector. I got my home inspection license before I got my broker's license. So I looked at 100+ houses to really learn and understand like what I need to see, what like makes sense. If I see something here, what does that mean for 2 or 3x? Like what does that mean up top? What does that mean for the rest of
Mm,
the basement? How does that affect mechanicals? Like just very small things that I would say the vast majority of agents just don't have the education on, right? Not because
mm,
they don't want it, but because like are they willing to get an inspection license, take a test for something that they'll probably never use? No,
mm,
right? So like you want to be really calculated with that when you own multifamily. And it's like, you're going to have 4 toilets, you're going to have 8 toilets, you're going to have, like 4 kitchens, you're going to have like you just have 4, 5, 6, whatever of everything. And you need to understand how those things interact with each other for it to function more efficiently. And if it's been
mm.
cobbled together by an out-of-state investor, or if there's been, band-aids on bullet holes,
Yeah.
you need to be prepared to like rip things out and redo it completely. Like
Yeah.
just don't half measure, like don't
Yeah.
do a half measure. You know what I mean? Tear it out, do it
Yeah.
the right way. If it's going to affect you in the next 5 to 10 years, rip it out and redo it. Just buy once, cry once, and handle it.
Yeah, right. Measure twice, cut once, as we say
Yes.
in construction. Like, I think it obviously seems like there's a lot that happened when you bought, but like, what were some things, whether it be plumbing, electrical, that came
Hmm.
up that you were like, oh man, this is bad? Like, can you get into the specifics of like some of the
Yeah.
issues with the building?
So, first one was the entryway, like it's like a deck, basically fell off the building. So it literally detached, just went off. And at the time, I think I'd owned it for like 3 months. Like it was,
3 months in, a
yeah,
deck falls off.
yeah. Yeah, I wish I was making this up, man. I really do.
Yeah.
Uh, but so I was living with my now fiance in Oak Park at the time, and the contractor that I had hired calls me and goes, "Hey, you're gonna want to see this." And I'm like, no, dude, just send me a picture. So he sends me a picture of it, off the building. I'm like, oh, this is horrible. Okay. Yeah, okay, I guess you should go out there. So, long story short, I hired the contractor to do it, and it just dragged on and on. And the village was like, you need architectural permits. So, you need plans that architect signs off on, drawings, and then you need to actually like apply for a permit to do it. And I'm like, so the whole time that I'm supposed to expedite this, the village is just, sitting on their hands doing absolutely nothing for like 2, 3 months. And one of my tenants had to get into his side of the building with a ladder. And it's
Are you
just like,
serious? You have
yeah,
to
I'm
get
serious.
on a
Yes.
ladder to get inside of his
Yep.
house?
Yeah, because again,
What?
like this is what happens when villages don't care. Like it's not about you as like the client of a service. They don't care. Like and like I'm not saying all of them, but I'm saying my experience as an investor, the majority, like if I'm being frank, right? And so like
Yeah.
that was one of the first challenges that was major. I had another one where I was told that the state fire marshal signed off on the boiler for the entire building. Fun fact, I was lied to. That was not accurate.
Oh,
And the fun part about that was it was not on the other side's property management company. It was not on them. They were told it was done, and it wasn't done. So they signed off under the understanding that it was already done and that work was completed. And so I was told it's signed off on and completed. And then I didn't know what to look for because I didn't have experience with boilers.
right.
So fortunately, I spoke to the state fire marshal, and he was willing to work with me, and we got that sorted out. But like the deck itself was probably all in like 5 to 10 grand. The boiler was like 3.5 grand. And then there was like other stuff. So my water heater broke in the first 6 months. So you figure
Jeez.
another 1,500 to 2 grand. And I had the inspectors come out and tell me like, hey, we need to do this, this, and that. I'm like, okay. I was told things that were just inaccurate. And as time progressed, I I had more inspection knowledge. So the second time, it was a lot different. And essentially, what happened was we finished the rehab. It took my contractor 7 months to do a 700 square foot apartment. For those of you who are new, it should be like weeks. Uh,
1 month for every 100 square feet,
yeah,
Sean.
yes, correct. Nothing like speed. So I ended up removing him, and I come to find out later that he had pulled permits, and essentially what had ended up happening was he never did a rough-in inspection and he never did a final. So we put walls over stuff that needed to be cut out. So
Oh
I ended up having
no.
to do that, right? And like this, and I will say, like, this became a blessing in disguise because it's put me in a position now where I can tell people, like, I promise you your first four is not going to be as bad as mine, and I can promise you that the mistakes that I made you will not make if you work with me, right? Like,
Yeah.
I didn't know what I didn't know because I didn't have the knowledge and I didn't have the guidance. Now I have the knowledge and the guidance, and I'm in a better position with like mentorship where I have people around me that are much more experienced than me, and I can answer most of the questions. But if I can't, I can make 2 phone calls and I can get the answer, right?
Yeah.
And you need that if you're going to take on, like, oh, it's going to be a small cosmetic rehab, and it's like, but is it? And are you
Mm,
educated enough to say it's going to be a cosmetic rehab? And are you
yeah.
educated enough to say, if I tear this wall out and I have to
Right.
fix what's behind it, do you know what the cost is going to be? Do you have a contractor lined up who you're confident can pull permits and execute it at the right pace and the right price? Because those are
Yep.
things that matter.
I agree 100%. And like I want to emphasize this like point really quick before you move on. Like for people that are listening, they're going to be like, okay, I'm not going to buy a 3 to 4 unit property then. Like I should just go buy a condo or go buy a single family house. Like why? Like what? Like this sounds like a horror story. Like there's too much
Mm-hmm.
going on.
Yeah.
What would you say to those people that like they're listening to this, they're however many minutes in, and they're like, ooh, like I don't know if I still want to do this. Like, what would you say to that? Like legitimate concern.
I would say no half measures. If you want to be
Mm,
successful, there are no half measures, there are no shortcuts. There's mentorship, which can help eliminate you stepping on landmines, but there's no half measures. You have to be willing to put in the time, put in the work to get to where you want to go. And the reality is like, I was just willing to do what absolutely whatever it took to get to the finish line. Like, I'm still not at the finish line. I'm still dealing with problems with the village. And I'm going to
yeah.
tell you, like, I'm going to outlast them. It just is what it is. Like, it's not a question for me, it's a statement. And so I
Mm,
would tell anyone listening, if they're scared, like, have a healthy amount of fear, but also don't let it control you and don't let it dictate what you do. A healthy amount of fear is like, I should question some things and really have like a first and a second basis, and like I should have the right people around me to answer the right questions. But you shouldn't be so afraid as to never act, right? Like,
mm,
the people who really become successful investors are the ones not necessarily who are willing to take the biggest risks, but the ones who are willing to put in the most work and deal with enough problems to get to a point where they're in a position where anything that comes in, they have that like confidence, because that confidence has been built over years of dealing and solving complex and difficult problems that are nonlinear. So when you're
mm,
capable of solving those problems, you become more confident. And with that confidence, you tackle harder and larger problems. And you just keep doing
mm.
that until you're at a point where you make a choice whether you don't want to tackle any more problems or not.
Yeah. Right. And to that, I think you said I like exactly. I love how you said it and what you said. But to add on, like if it was easy, everybody would be doing it. And so that is an advantage. Like there's an opportunity in the things that are hard
Yes.
because like the challenges that I'm seeing right now at this recording, where it's October 9th, 2024, inventory is pretty hard. So I have a lot of buyers that we got them pre-approved for a loan to buy a multifamily building, and they've been looking for a very long time. And like they're qualified. Like they could put the money down. It's not like their purchasing power is low. Like I got guys in the millions. Like that's how wide their like their search is. And it's just there's not a lot of inventory. And if they do find a deal that pops up, it goes quick to a cash offer, or it's doesn't make sense. Like the
Yep.
deal just financially, the price, the structure, whatever the case may be. And so like I want to emphasize that like with what Sean said, there's no shortcuts, and understand that like this takes time, but if you do it right the first time, like if you at least don't do the half measures, you look for the right property, know what to look for in a multifamily building, it will change the trajectory of your lifestyle. Like so many of my clients, when they bought their first building, and I don't want to like go on too long on this rant, but like this is really important. Like so many of my clients that still work that have worked full-time jobs, they're not business owners and like real estate investors that like they do, like they were teachers and average people that bought multi-unit buildings that now get to work less because they got lucky. And some of them didn't even know what they were doing, because this was like years ago, before there's as many resources that we have now. And now they're just working less. Like they get to work less and have more time and go buy the next second, third, or fourth building if they wanted to. Like some people I know buy building number two and then they stop and they're like, you know what? Cash flow is good. I'm fine. Like I don't care. I'm not trying to own 100 units, right? And so like I think to your point, it takes work, yeah. Like a lot of it is mindset, a lot of it is having a clear direction, vision, and then having the mentorship and team around you is like super helpful because it fast tracks or it allows you to save time and money. But if you don't like want to put in the work and you want to just take the easy route, then you're missing out on making an extra 2, 5, 10 grand a month if you do it correctly with multi-unit properties. And like that's what I'm seeing. Like this is real, and I think the highest return is on the remodels. So
Hmm.
like if you can find a multi-unit and then fix it up, if for anyone who's listening, the millionaire formula is basically buy a building every year if possible, or every other year, but buy a building that needs work. And so last thing I'll say, Sean, and then we'll come back to you, but there's two types of loan programs that you can get when you're buying a multifamily property with a construction loan. So you can actually, the lender will give you money to buy the building and they will give you money to fix it up. There's an FHA loan and then there's a conventional loan program. Both have construction available for 2 to 4 unit properties. Conventional is a little bit easier. If you qualify for that, it's easy to work with, but you can go 5% down conventional or 3.5% down FHA. So keep that in mind if you're listening. If you don't even know where to start there. 5% down conventional, FHA 3.5% down. Get it with a construction loan. Your ROI is great. Or save money for construction. You don't need to borrow from the lender. Just know that that is an option for you. But going back to what you were saying, Sean, like how did you calculate, or let me ask you this, like when you moved into the building, did you change rents at all? Did you keep them the same? Like how did you handle that with tenants?
So due to the condition of the units, they already had existing leases. They were all 12-month leases, and they were not going to be up for like 6 to 8 months. So I had conversations with all the tenants. All of them were paying tenants. And I basically had to restructure like how they paid me and like get that all in line. So I did that, and I didn't increase the rents massively because of two reasons. Number one, I'm like, I don't want to increase the rent at a level where I remove one or two of them while I need to rebuild like my own setup, right? So it's like
Yep.
don't shoot
Good.
yourself in the foot, right?
Mhm.
Also like they pay their rent on time. They don't complain to me or talk about like negligent problems. If they need something, they say, "Hey Sean, can you fix this or can you fix that?" And we get it addressed very quick,
Yeah.
and I communicate with them, right? Like I look at my tenants as like my clients,
Yeah.
and I look at my building like a business, and I just feel like that's a really firm approach that I just won't move on. So to answer your question, in the short term, I didn't really raise rents much, like $50 here, $80 here, like small numbers, enough to where I could make a move and, like see a slight increase every month, but not
Yeah.
enough to where my tenants are considering leaving.
Yeah. Why do you look at your building as a business?
Because it is, right? Like,
Mhm.
to me, if you're going to take what you do seriously as a landlord, be like, be the landlord that if you were leasing from somebody, be the landlord you'd want to have, right? Like,
It
if
sounds so simple. Like
it,
it's that.
yeah, like it sounds simple, right? But like I genuinely, like, it's a cliche, right? Like, but I mean it. Like,
Yeah.
if you have an issue with plumbing, you want to be able to call them and not feel like you're creating a problem, or you are the problem. You want to be able to call them and have an open line of communication and say, hey, my toilet's acting up, or my sink isn't, is clogged. Can you come and take a look at it, right?
Yeah.
Just like, and excuse my language, but just giving a shit about the
Yeah.
people around you. Like, these people are paying your mortgage, and they can choose to leave, right? Or they can choose to be a problem. So if they don't, take care of them. Treat it like a business. Treat them like they're your clients, because they are. And if you build and cultivate that relationship as a business, the better relationship you have with your tenants, the easier that aspect of multifamily is. And I can tell you that that can be the greatest asset or the greatest liability that you can face as a landlord.
Could not have said it better. I had a previous investor on. He said the exact same thing. And like you realize how many landlords are not, which is so like to me, it's so like common sense. Like, yeah, these are your paying customers every month. Treat them well because they're paying for your mortgage. They're paying for your expenses and they could leave. And like in Chicago, tenants have a decent amount of power. And like you don't want to get into that game. Like it gets very dangerous.
Hmm.
One example of this where like my investor, my client was just a good landlord was there was, porch pirates where they come
Yeah.
and steal like your packages and stuff from. So like we have, I don't know who's in what market, who's listening because it's all over the US, but like um we have a lot of people that come and steal packages from the porch or from the deck sometimes, like Amazon packages, things like that. And so what the landlord did was he got basically a big like box that had a lock on it, like a code for the drivers. So now when they go, they just open up the box, they put the package in the box, close it, and then it's locked. So like only those that have the code can access. And like the tenants were complaining about this. The landlord like the next day like ordered it, got the box, installed it with the code, fixed the problem right away. And all the tenants were like, wow, like our previous landlord literally when we would complain like didn't really do anything, and they were like surprised, they were
Hmm.
surprised that he took feedback, listened to what they were saying, and then fixed it. And what was it, like $200, like 100 $200, like eh,
It's a no-brainer.
problem, like it's like yeah. And like it's like the 80-20 rule, like like 80% of your results come from 20% of the work. I actually have the book behind me, speaking of, but to that point, like those little things is like the highest ROI you could do
Yeah.
because it increases your relationship with your tenants. It increases your credibility. It allows you then it's like you're depositing it into someone's account. So then when it's time to withdraw, you can withdraw, metaphorically
Yep.
speaking. Like you've
Exactly.
earned that right. You've earned it to say, hey, like if I ask for an extra 50 or $100 a month, it's like it's for a good reason. You could trust me. I'm not just trying to squeeze you. And so landlords have a really bad rap, like at least in Chicago,
Yeah.
like a bad reputation. And so I'm glad to hear other people have that mindset, Sean, of like this is a business. What do you think about all that?
I think it's important to, like, really care about the people around you. Like, there's going to be tenants that you're going to have in a building for years, and there's going to be tenants where you'll have them in there and you're going to have to evict them, and it just is what it is, right? Like, and there's no way around it. It's going to be an unpleasant process. The reality
Yeah.
is I would say the hardest thing that you can do is be empathetic in a time that you yourself are like aggravated and upset, and it's like this tenant is screwing me out of money, they're, you know, fighting me in my own building, blah blah blah. And it's like be patient, treat it like a business, take the emotion out of it. I know you want to get aggravated and like attack the problem head on, right? But it's like you take that emotion out, take the anger out, take the rage out, sit down, make some calls, talk to an eviction attorney, talk to somebody who has experience evicting somebody in your area, talk to an investor who owns multifamily who's done it before. They will be able to tell you these are the options that you have. This is an option that maybe you don't want to do. Like cash for keys is something that I would consider right off the bat. And I would say, look, I'll give you $3,000 to fly a kite and just leave and not come back. Right. And it's like,
Yep.
you
That's
know,
very
like,
popular strategy. Yeah.
and here's the reality, right? Like, do I want to give somebody who's actively screwing me $3,000? No, I do not. But the reality is you have to make a business decision, and you understand if you're in the city, specifically like Cook County, it's going to cost you. You figure average rent, let's say $1,000. You're not going to get them out under 5 or 6 months. You're just not. So you're going to burn 6K anyways. So instead of burning 6 to 8K plus lawyer fees, you burn 3K and you tell them to fly a kite and leave, right?
Right. That's not even
And
including lender, like, or I'm sorry, attorney fees. Yeah. Yeah. Right.
exactly. So like, you have to be willing to get uncomfortable. And it's like you said earlier on, like if it was easy, everyone would do it. You're right. If it was easy, everyone would do this, but it's not. It seems simple when you see some of these podcasts where, guests come on with 100, 200, 300 units, right? And it's
Yeah.
like, it's like, oh man, like I want to have that kind of cash flow. And, like you ask them like how hard they suffered in the first few
Yeah.
years, or like how many mistakes they made, or like how close they came to being total financial annihilation early
Yeah.
on in their career when they took the risk. Like those are people who don't accidentally get there. You don't accidentally hit that level without having some sort of capability and resilience and
Oh
business
yeah.
acumen to understand like this is a problem. I have to not be emotional. I have to be logical, and I need to solve it as effectively and as quickly as possible. So who do I call and what do I do?
And like those people never gave up. Like that's the
Mm-hmm.
one thing that you see is a difference between the people that like stopped and people that kept going. Like I had a client who he's buying he's looking for a 4 unit building, and he calls me because we keep in touch every other week to see how the house hunt's going, things like that. And he was like, "Man, I'm tired. Like I haven't found it. Like we keep looking, we keep looking." And then 48 hours after that phone call, a building pops up. And this is real estate 101. Like deals will come out of nowhere, like all the time. Just you
Mm-hmm.
never know when someone's just going to say, "All right, I'm going to sell this." And it was perfect. And like he made the offer and he got it accepted. Like, because when he saw it, he knew after looking at so many other buildings, Sean, he knew like this one, I have to move on quick because a lot of other people are going to move on it. And so,
Yep.
like, it was funny because he was about to give up, and I told him, I'm like, be patient. I know it's hard. And luckily he didn't have a lease that he had to end. He like his living situation allowed him to be a little bit more flexible. But like those guys that have 100, 200, 300 units, like really a lot of it is mindset, tenacity, resilience, being able to like address problems head on and then use that as a learning mistake, but then like keep going and like not give up. um so like for you, I had this question written down because I was like, okay, like I want to see like what your thoughts are on this. But like how do you deal with being a landlord and living in the same place that you're renting out now? Like is it weird? Is it comfortable? Like are you fine? Like walk me through that, especially if you're engaged.
Yeah, so I use it as an opportunity to build rapport with my tenants. I'm
Mm,
not aiming to be their best friend, right? Like I'm not trying to be their best friend. They're not trying to be mine. But I want to build a rapport so that they know I'm an ethical person. I'm a moral person. Like come to me and talk to me and like, hey, I have an issue. I really don't want to talk to you about this because you live here and I don't want it to be weird. I want to have that comfortability over text message, over phone calls, like be human, like be kind to people, like empathy matters. And like we're living in an age where we have more capability and more more capability and more knowledge that is so easily accessible on the internet, and it creates such a divisive environment, right? And it's like you need to sit down and you need to be able to have old school real one-on-one conversations and just talk to people. It's not rocket science, man, but it's not easy either. It seems simple at face value, but it takes effort, it takes stamina, and it takes like time, right? And like you need to have those conversations as a landlord, especially if you're house hacking and you're in a 4 unit, right?
Mhm.
Like, you know, there's going to be tenants who you might not get along with. You might not agree with some of the things they do, some of the things they say. Is their
Yeah.
rent on time? Are they a good tenant? If those answers are both yes and they're not doing anything horrible or illegal, leave them be. Like
Right.
you know, like don't make it your business to be in their business, right?
Yeah.
Just be conscious and be human and think about it, like not just as like a person, or not just as a business, but as a person also. Like you don't
Yeah.
always have to be emotional, but empathy goes a long way.
I think that is one of the major advantages of like being around your investment property or living in the multi-unit is you get to actually like meet your tenants and they get to see like you're a real person. Like you get
Hmm.
to build relationships with them, rapport, like you said, and that allows you to meet them halfway or just, I mean, just trust building in general is good.
Yeah,
Like it
100%.
helps, right? So it's not like weird. You're not like, ooh, like, you know, I'm asking you for money every month. Like,
No,
it's not anything like that, like really awkward.
no, because they saw that I put the value in up front. Something breaks outside, I fix it. They have questions, I
Mm,
answer them. Hey, the deck fell off, I communicate with them. Yeah, I'm struggling to deal with the village right now. Hey, like, you know, one of my tenants is like, hey, the water got shut off. I was in Canada. Okay, this is a real story. The water got shut off to the building while I was in Canada the day before I was going to propose to my fiance. Okay,
oh no.
we're at a. I'm a huge fan of anime. Minor side note. And so we were at an anime convention, me and my fiance, and
Nice.
I get a phone call from my tenant who's like, he's quiet dude, really nice guy. Like never calls me if it's not important. And it's like I see his name pop up, and I'm like, oh no,
Oh no. I hope he's
like
telling
oh
me like good luck on
yeah.
your engagement or something. Like, oh, but
So he
odds
calls
are,
me. It goes,
yeah.
Sean, somebody shut the water. So
Are you
I
kidding
call
me?
the water department, and then I call a friend of mine, and I was like, hey, they shut the water off on my building. You know, like please be on standby if I need you to come out there and like do something, like whatever it takes, like just let me know and just like, you know, handle it, and I'll help you out with whatever. So he's a good friend of mine. He's another real estate broker. I trust him. And so he was like basically waiting in the wings to go help me. And I asked him, I go, is there anything outside? And like I had been an inspector at that point. So I was thinking like if somebody shut our water off, it wasn't because the bill wasn't paid. So there's got to be an external
Mm,
reason, right?
yep,
So it turns out that there was some sort of like fire truck down the street, and it was pulling all the water out of the fire hydrant. So basically, it wasn't that our water got shut off, it just pulled all the water away. And so he mentioned, he's like, yeah, you know, there is a fire truck. And I was like, they're pulling all the water out. Like, I was like, just give it an hour. If it's not back on, call me back and I'll have somebody come out there. So he calls me back 45 minutes later. Hey, the water's back on. The pressure's a little bit low, but like, you know, we're good. And I was like, all right, cool. I appreciate you calling me. Thank you. And it's like, if I
wow.
hadn't done the work to have the rapport, to get a phone call where he would talk to me and just shoot me straight instead of water, no work, please fix. Like, you know, putting the
Yep,
work in was the
yep,
difference between me having to send one of my friends out and waste 3 hours of his time
yep,
than, you know, me just, hey, just sit tight, hold on, and then solve it. Like
yep,
smarter, not harder. Put in the work
yep,
up front, reap the rewards in the back end. Like you have to be
yep,
conscious and practical about those things. So like that's just
yeah.
another thing where like, you know, if you're gonna house hack and you're gonna live there and you're gonna do it the right way, like you don't have to be everyone's friend, but you have to build that rapport because at some point you're gonna need it at some point. And you
And
will be glad
yeah,
that day you did.
yeah. I love that. Like, I appreciate that you have an open dialogue with the tenants so they feel comfortable. I mean, in this case, yeah, like there's a problem, like we need help fixing it, but like they know that they could call you and you're going to answer.
Yep.
Like they will reach out and you can legitimately handle their problem, right?
Yep.
Instead of getting police involved, instead of filing lawsuits. And now we're great. Now there's all these issues like, it doesn't have to come close to that because the landlord is doing what he or she's supposed to be doing. Like, that's great. That's crazy to me though. That like I'm just trying to understand because like I just got married a year ago, and like if somebody called
Congratulations.
me, thank you. If somebody called me the day before I'm gonna propose, hey, this is what's going on, I'd be freaking out. And I'm in like out of state in another country at that point. Like, yeah, at least you're in Canada, not in like Germany,
Yeah.
and it got fixed within the same time period, so that's nice too. But yeah, I was talking to another investor. Having systems in place, having open dialogue really helps. If there are issues, tenants are a little bit more patient when
Hmm.
you do a good job. Like if
Yep.
if they would be impatient if you constantly like neglected the things you're supposed to do. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, it's goodwill, man. Like, like
Yeah.
when I put the new deck up or like, one of my tenants in the bottom half of the other building, she has the largest unit, and there was a door there that wouldn't lock all the time. And the building is super old. It's built in the 1800s. And so none of it is like, none of it fits correctly, right? You have to custom frame a lot of the stuff. So I called my carpenter and I was like, hey, I want to get this addressed. Like, let's do it. So we basically ripped the entire door out, frame all of it, like all the way out to the actual building itself, and then hand framed everything to make a standard size door fit. And then, water sealed it. Now that door locks. It's simple things, man. It's not, I'm not spending 3 grand, 4 grand, right? It's
Yeah.
$600 plus the door, right? Like it's some labor and a material cost. The
Yeah.
reality is like that gives her the ability to feel more secure and more safe in her apartment, and that matters. So like putting that in up front, if something happens, my tenants know, hey, if Sean says he's going to do this, he has the track record. He's done all of the things that he said he was going to do, so we're going to do it. So it's
That's
just
huge.
like it
Yep.
matters, man.
Yeah, when you say you're gonna do something and you do it, and they see that, like, kind of like I don't have kids, but like they always have the saying like kids, especially people, like they watch what you do, not what you say. So
Yes.
you could tell them all these nice things, but like at the end of the day, is he fixing the door? Is he fixing the threshold? Is he fixing the plumbing? Like, okay, like what? Like, are you actually doing what you say you're gonna do? And like I think to this, like for anyone listening, the most successful investors that I've seen have bought their buildings and completely renovated them to be like up to code and like up to par. And ideally, if you could have a building that does have all these issues addressed up front, then that's what's going to allow you to not have to like constantly fix and like constantly go back and like address little issues that come up. And
Yep.
so I know there's a lot more work involved in that, of course. If you're okay with fixing it up as you go, of course, you have that option as well. But I think one of the most popular reasons for someone needing to sell a multi-unit or like entering it, because multi-units don't go into foreclosures often, or like they don't, because their value, like what I'm noticing is like if you're doing a good job, if it's good building, like you're getting the returns on the investment. But if it fails, it's because the property itself has problems that you didn't address. So then the tenants leave and then you're not collecting income. And then now you can't afford a mortgage payment that's, way above your income. Let's just say. Like that's a pretty common denominator. So like you're addressing the issues, you're fixing them. Like there's gonna come a point, and it is an older building, like you said, but hopefully like the problems will start to dissipate. Like there won't be something every other right. Because are you getting like how many calls are you getting, or how many issues are you getting like a week or a month?
Zero.
Oh, okay. There you go.
Yeah, and it's like, all of last year, I was just super aggressive. Like one of my tenants called me
Like
to fix
fixing it.
something. It got
Oh,
addressed immediately. Like, I mean, that day, like they could call me if I'm not in or if I'm, like with a client doing an inspection, like with like family up north, like literally that day, if they call me, hey, this needs to get addressed, I call my plumber, and say, hey, I need this taken care of in this unit, they're going to expect you, today, let me know what you're going to charge me and take care of it. All right, cool. Sounds good. Like, I also, like, I haven't talked about it much on the podcast, but like because I ran into so many problems with the contractor originally, I had to build my own network of contacts that I can
Mm.
trust directly by working on my own stuff and fixing problems that should have been fixed, like right off the bat. Like, that's why I paid you to, right? So it was a silver lining and a blessing in disguise, because now I'm at a point where if someone says, hey, I need a plumber, cool, I got a couple different ones. What do you need? You need commercial, you need residential, like, oh, I need a license. Cool, they're both licensed. Next. Like, I need an electrician. Yeah, I got one. License. You need a window guy, I got a window guy. You need a drywall guy, I got one. Like, those are the type of things that, and I'm not going to sit here and say all the brokers you talk to don't have it, but brokers who are involved in doing this for real, and like really, like, I'm not talking like a dealer to a year, but like they want to do this all the time. Those are going to be the brokers that you want to talk to. You want to talk to people who have experience doing rehab or doing complex stuff. And like, I just had a client, I'll take like 30 seconds for this. I had a client who approached me in, I think, like late May, early June, to buy a multi-unit. He wanted a house hack and he wanted to be profitable. So you already know that's not going to be easy. We spent up until like 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, we found one. He sent it to me. I looked at it, looked at the numbers, and was like, this is going to go probably 15K over within the first like 72 hours. Here's what you need to know. Let's get everything moving. Like, let's get out there the next day. We got out there the next day. While we were there were two other people there. And so I pushed it and I told them, hey, we need to have all our ducks in a row. We offered highest and best. We offered again. We won the bid. After we won the bid, I set up everything. The inspection found that one of the sewers was blocked. Okay. It was blocked 5 feet in. Cool. Got it. Let's go get a plumber. So I called him. I had a plumber come out. We scoped it. We figured out what we needed to do. Simple fix. Cool. Problem solved. On to the next problem. Like, okay, we're closing. He's going to be closing and buying the building officially, I think, like Thursday. I think it's this Thursday is his closing. And with his closing being Thursday, his mortgage, because he's in one of the areas that you get a rate decrease or like some sort of rate help on it. I don't know exactly what. Based on the area. So his rate's going to be lower. So his mortgage is going to be, I think, 19 and some change. And his other 2 units, it's a 3-unit building. It's 2 2-1s and 1 1-1.
Wow.
The 2-1s are going to be Section 8, and they're going to be $1,200 a piece. So he's going to cash flow $2,400, and then he's going to pay out $1,950 with his mortgage. So he's going to be positive. You figure $300, $400, and that money can go towards whatever bills for the building. So you figure at the very least, after his bills are paid, he's going to be close to break even with his mortgage plus his bills. And it was funny. It's funny. The lender on that one was like talking to him, and he's like, "You don't realize how good of a deal you're getting right now. Like, if you had the wider scope, you would understand. But like, we did a good job on that, and it's just to say, like, I had all the tools in my tool belt to where every problem that came up, we didn't have to ask for 3 extensions. We had 1 extension because we needed the plumbing thing solved. I had the plumber there next day, taking care of inspection next day. We had a drone pilot come out for the roof. Like, I'm big on inspection because I'm a licensed inspector, so I want to go in with all the information. So it's just like, you need to have the knowledge of like, okay, this is the next problem. This is how we solve it. Don't freak out. Let's get it done. Boom.
Yep. You touched on a few things there, like having the contacts ready, like having the plumber ready, like, okay, here's what we do. Let's get it done quickly. We don't need extensions. We're going to be in and out. And like that has allowed you, because you're in the day-to-day, you are an investor. You understand, like, not only as an inspector what to look for, but as an investor, and like you have those contacts around you. A lot of people, I think, struggle because they don't have the network that like
I agree.
them, right? You don't have the electrician you can trust, the contractor you can trust, the drywall guy, the drone pilot when you're like, hey, I want to look at the roof. Like having those connections. And that's why I think real estate agents are a great connector. Like, they have so many at least the ones that I think are operating at a higher level, like they have like genuinely good contacts that are
Yeah.
like, not just like you Googled 3 plumbers and like, okay, let's pick one that's got good reviews. Like, no, like this
Yeah.
is a guy you've used and like genuinely you trust. The other thing too with that, even if this your client that's closing like is breaking even, if you think about it, like now he's getting experience as a landlord. He knows what to do quicker and better on the second deal if he wants to do it. His net worth now is going to go up every single year, like
Yep.
by a lot if it's a multi-unit. And he's now getting tax benefits, even if so, these are all the benefits, even if you're not cash flowing. Like even if you're just breaking even, if he's at least breaking even, he's living for free, increasing his net worth, in which he could then use the equity to go buy more stuff.
Yep.
And he gets tax benefits and write-offs. So every year he gets money back from the government because he's a landlord.
Correct. Yep.
Like, I don't know about you, but that's a pretty good benefit. Like, this is how people don't pay income taxes. Like, I know investors that make a ton of money. Like, they make a ton of money in their normal, like, some have W-2 jobs and some have businesses. And both, like especially the business owners, they have like no income every year on paper because it's all written off with the real estate that they
Hmm.
own. It's like
Yep.
their income tax bracket is way lower. Now, sometimes you got to get creative on the financing front, so I advise be careful with that. Like if you already have an established portfolio, fine, but if you're trying to buy multi-units, ideally you want a W-2 job making, 70 to 100K a year that allow you to like really get and it depends on your market. In our market, they're fairly expensive. So, I think like it, all that aside, like if you're at least breaking even, heck, even if you're losing $500 a month or 1,000 a month, like I get to live in a nice 2 bed, 1 bath, or even 1 bed, 1 bath that's 1,000, 1,200 square feet, and either I live for free or I don't have to pay much. For starters, that's great because you can always increase the rent after you do value adds. Like you have those opportunities. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
I think like a lot of investors go in and they think like cash flow is king, but they don't know everything else that goes into it, right? Like cash flow is good, and like obviously as a first time investor, that's the shiny number, right? Like that's like the gold number that you are like, oh, I'm gonna make $1,000 every month. But investors who have been in the game for a while or who have more perspective, like they understand that cash flow is a single metric, and there's a lot of different metrics that you can use to measure a property. And the more metrics you use to measure and the better it shows up on all the metrics, the better a deal you're actually getting, not just for short-term cash flow, but you mid to long-term appreciation, and then you can do
Yep.
value add, you can do the taxes, which is a huge one, which a lot of people don't talk about. And it's like when you talk to the investors who are in the game, who understand, they can tell you like there's more than one way to skin the cat, right? And because of that, you can be very successful with just a couple buildings. Like there's people that I know that cash flow 5 grand off 2 or 3 buildings that are not
Yeah.
short terms. Like they're long term
Yeah.
rentals, like regular rentals, and it's like, you talk to somebody and say, what would you be willing to do outside of your W-2? How much work would you be willing to put in, and how much money would you be willing to put in to make an extra $3,000 to $5,000 a month cash flow in the next 5 years? And it's like you can do it much quicker, right? But like if you want to be smart and you want to understand it, like talk to the people who know, talk to a lender who does multifamily. And that's like another thing. Like if the people that you're surrounding yourself with on this journey have not done it, you're
Mm,
surrounding yourself with the wrong people,
yeah.
right? Like you just are. Like in my opinion, like when I started asking questions about multifamily, so my brokerage is the Axon Group. We're led by Jake Fugman and Mike Scanlon, both people who are, if you know Chicago multifamily real estate, you know those two names. Like the Axon Group, right? They're bigger names, and both of them have made their name in multifamily. And so I wanted to be that. I wanted to understand how multifamily works at a larger scale. So you put yourself in the position where you are the least educated person in the room, and you have the most growth opportunity by putting yourself around those people, right? Ask difficult questions, be annoying sometimes, like
Yeah.
learn, because that's how you're going to be able to provide value
Yeah.
in your own life and to others.
Yeah. Yeah. If I'm committing to something big, especially financially, I'll ask 100 questions. I don't care.
Yeah,
Like, I'll
100%.
ask
That's the
100
right
questions.
attitude.
If
Yeah.
you're annoyed, like get over it because this is a big deal. I want to make sure I'm doing
Yes.
it right. And
Yeah.
and I'm not asking like dumb questions. Like at least I don't think I am. Like they're legitimate. Like I want to poke holes at this thing. I want to find a reason almost not to do it
Yep.
because like again, I'd rather measure twice and cut once. Like I'm gonna
Mhm.
make this purchase. It's gotta like make sense. Sean, I love what you said. You shared a lot of really good high level tactical value. I want to end with this question. What advice would you give to anybody who is thinking about buying like their first multifamily building?
I would say two things. One, stay the course, be willing to be uncomfortable and solve difficult problems, and understand that at some point something out of the blue is going to hit you. It's no one's fault. Accept it, crush it, and learn from it. And two, um, be willing and be able to push yourself into a zone of learning that most people never achieve. I'm a sponge when I soak information up. I like to learn from people who are much more skilled than I am. It's how I've gotten to the position I'm at, in a very short amount of time. And I would tell them the same thing. If you want to learn and you want to buy your first 3 unit, 4 unit, sit down and talk to somebody, whether it's a broker, whether it's a lender, whether it's an attorney, whoever or whoever's going to be your first point of contact. Do that and be a sponge. Just listen to them and never take things personally. If they challenge you or tell you, no, this won't work, here's why, don't fight back at them and say, no, this has to work, blah, blah, blah. Listen to what they have to say and ask them, okay, if it won't, tell me why.
Yeah. Yeah. I've had so many people, they're like, oh, this lender is pre-approving me for more, so I'm gonna go with
Hmm.
them. And I'm
Yes.
like, we're looking at the same documents. Their math is wrong. Because that can happen. And they get under contract and they're calling me 2 weeks before closing. Hey, we're having issues in underwriting. And I'm like, what a
I'm shocked.
surprise. Like yeah, I'm shocked. Like just let's do it right now.
Yeah.
And like yeah, so listen to the advice. I love that. Be willing to like basically get out of your comfort zone, be in the zone of learning and like soaking information up like a sponge and then stay the course. Accept the obstacles that are going to come your way and the challenges. And yeah, I mean, that's great, man. I love it. Thank you so much, Sean, for taking the time out to just share your experience and a lot of like the things you've done to overcome and the challenges that like you're still facing now. I really think a lot of people are going to find value in it. So to close out, if anyone has any more questions, just drop it in the comments below. And if you want to hear more content on how to get the financing you need to achieve financial freedom or to buy and invest in real estate, you can reach out to me and my team directly. As a lender, we have a lot of different programs. Thank you so much for watching. And Sean, again, thank you.
Take care.